Have you ever been in the middle of an argument, fully aware that your words and tone were only making things worse, yet feeling powerless to stop yourself? Maybe your voice began to rise without you noticing. Your words turned sharper, and somewhere inside you knew you were crossing a line you'd later regret. Before you realized it, you were saying things you didn't truly mean. Things that couldn't be unsaid, no matter how much you wish they could. We've all fallen into these bad habits in conflict, cutting people off before they finish, overreacting to a single phrase, clinging to our ego instead of actually listening. And the truth is, most conflicts don't break relationships because of the original issue. They break because of the way we handle them. It's not the disagreement that causes the deepest damage. It's the impatience, the defensiveness, the inability to step back and breathe. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Imagine bringing that kind of calm, unshakable presence into every argument. Imagine being able to slow the moment down, see it for what it is, and choose a response that builds understanding instead of burning bridges. Today I want to tell you a story, not about someone born with this gift of composure, but about someone who used to lose control almost every time tension rose, and how learning the Stoic way of resolving conflict didn't just change his arguments, it changed his entire life. And if you're willing to listen, I believe it can do the same for you. A few years ago, I worked with a colleague named David, and on paper, he was the kind of person any team would dream of having, brilliant in his craft, relentlessly dedicated, passionate about delivering results. But the moment conflict entered the room, it was like watching a storm gather over an otherwise calm sea. You could see the change in him almost instantly. One sharp comment from a coworker, one slightly critical email that he took the wrong way, and you'd feel the tension rise like the air before lightning strikes. His voice would climb in volume, his words would come faster and sharper, and his body language, crossed arms, narrowed eyes leaning forward, wasn't just defensive, it was combative. He believed he was standing his ground, protecting his work and his integrity, but in reality, what he was doing was letting bad habits take the wheel. Each time his emotions dictated his reactions, something broke. Sometimes it was the flow of the meeting, other times it was a relationship he had spent months building. Trust chipped away little by little, and his name began to carry a silent label. Difficult to work with. The irony was David didn't want to be this way, he just didn't know another way to be in the heat of the moment. Then came the meeting that changed everything. It was tense from the start, deadlines slipping, voices overlapping, frustration hanging heavy in the air. At one point, David and another colleague clashed so hard that the room fell into an awkward silence afterward. When the meeting ended and people shuffled out with that, "let's just forget this" energy, his mentor, a man of few words, quietly asked him to stay behind. He looked David straight in the eyes and said, "You don't have to attend every fight you're invited to." That was it. No lecture, no long-winded feedback, just that one sentence. But it landed like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples through David's thoughts that wouldn't stop. Over the next few weeks, those words kept echoing in his mind during small disagreements, during moments when he felt the urge to jump in and prove himself right. For the first time, he began to wonder, what if strength in conflict wasn't about speaking louder or faster, but about choosing whether to engage at all? What if the real power was in staying calm while everyone else was losing their heads? That seed of thought was the beginning of a transformation he never saw coming. Stoicism teaches one of the most liberating lessons you can ever apply in life. Learn to separate what you can control from what you can't. When you're in the middle of a conflict, you can't control the other person's tone. You can't dictate the words that come out of their mouth, and you certainly can't command their emotions to settle down just because you want them to. You can't make someone calmer by being louder, and you can't force respect by pushing harder. But what you can control, what is always within your reach, is your own breathing, the words you choose, the posture you hold, and perhaps most importantly, your willingness to listen before you respond. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality," and nowhere is that more true than in the heat of an argument. Our imagination starts spinning the moment tension rises. A simple disagreement suddenly feels like a personal attack. A poorly phrased sentence transforms in our minds into proof that someone has been against us all along. We start replaying old grievances, stacking them up until we're not just fighting about this moment, we're fighting about every moment that came before it. And in that state, our bad habits take over, interrupting, assuming the worst, cutting people off before they've had the chance to explain. Stoic calmness is about breaking that cycle. It's about stepping back, sometimes physically, always mentally, and creating a pause between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. It's asking yourself in that space, is this worth my peace? Is my ego talking, or is my reason speaking? Those questions pull you out of the storm and into a place where you can see clearly. This isn't weakness. In fact, it's the opposite. It's the kind of strength that can change the entire tone of a conversation. When you stop letting impulse decide for you, you stop being at the mercy of the moment. You become the anchor in the room, the one who can keep their footing while others are slipping. And when you practice this long enough, people notice. They stop seeing you as someone who always has to win and start seeing you as someone they can trust to bring clarity and stability when it matters most. That is the quiet, unshakable power Stoicism offers in conflict, and it's available to you every single time you choose not to let the situation dictate your state of mind. There are 3 Stoic practices that, if you truly commit to them, can completely replace the bad habits that so often sabotage conflict resolution and transform the way people experience you in moments of tension. The first is something I call the pause technique. Before you reply, whether it's in a heated conversation, a tense meeting, or even a quick text exchange, take a single deep breath. It sounds too simple to matter, but those 2 seconds are a break in the chain, a wedge in the automatic loop between stimulus and reaction. In that space, you reclaim the ability to choose your response rather than let your emotions run on autopilot. Sometimes that pause is the difference between saying something destructive and saying something that moves the conversation forward. The second is reframe the narrative. When someone says something that rubs you the wrong way, your mind's first instinct might be to translate it as an attack. They're trying to undermine me, or they don't respect me. But Stoic practice asks you to shift that frame. Instead of they're attacking me, think they're expressing their perspective. What can I learn? This reframing strips the ego out of the equation and replaces defensiveness with curiosity. It allows you to see that most people aren't out to destroy you. They're simply advocating for their own viewpoint, often clumsily or passionately, just like you do. And when you meet that with genuine curiosity, you open the door to understanding instead of escalation. The third is detach from winning. In the Stoic view, the goal in a disagreement is not to win the argument, it's to protect your character. You can lose the debate and still win the relationship, and in the long run, that's a far greater victory. This doesn't mean being passive or letting go of your principles. It means refusing to let the need to be right override your ability to be wise. It's about recognizing that sometimes preserving trust, respect, and cooperation is more valuable than delivering the perfect counterpoint. David began to practice these 3 things every day, not in the big public showdowns, but in the smallest, least visible interactions, because that's where habits are truly built. He slowed down his replies to emails, resisting the urge to fire back immediately when something irritated him. He began asking clarifying questions instead of assuming he knew the other person's intent. He made a conscious effort to lower his voice when others raised theirs, a subtle signal that he was choosing calm over escalation. At first, it felt unnatural, almost forced, like trying to write with his non-dominant hand. But over time, it became second nature. Slowly, people began to notice the difference. The same colleagues who once braced themselves for a fight when David entered a conversation now found themselves relaxing in his presence. His reputation shifted from hot-headed to steady, from someone to avoid during conflict to someone you could trust to mediate it. People began seeking him out for his perspective, not to challenge it, but to find balance and clarity. And that's the power of these Stoic practices. They don't just change how you handle conflict. They change how people see you, how they respond to you, and ultimately, the kind of opportunities and relationships you attract into your life. By pausing, reframing, and detaching from the need to win, David didn't just break his bad habits. He built a new identity rooted in calmness, respect, and quiet authority. And that is a transformation available to anyone willing to practice. Conflict is inevitable. No matter how kind you are, no matter how much you try to avoid it, there will always be moments when disrespect, misunderstandings, and clashing perspectives find their way into your life. That's just part of being human. But here's the truth. While conflict is inevitable, the bad habits we often bring into it, interrupting before the other person can finish, escalating a small disagreement into a full-blown argument, defending ourselves without ever really listening, are not. Those are choices, even if they don't feel like it in the moment. And because they're choices, you have the power to change them. You can choose stoic calmness. You can choose to be the still water in a room full of storms, the person who doesn't get swept away just because the current is strong. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Think about that. The thing itself doesn't have the power to hurt your peace unless you hand it the keys. And you can take those keys back anytime you want. Imagine what your relationships could feel like if you stopped meeting fire with fire. Imagine what your career could look like if you were known as the person who stays composed under pressure, who can be trusted to respond with clarity instead of chaos. Imagine the weight that would lift from your own heart if you no longer felt compelled to win every argument just to feel in control. The next time conflict comes knocking, and it will, remember this: you don't have to attend every fight you're invited to. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is silence. The most powerful action you can take is to walk away. And the most powerful victory is protecting your own peace. Guard your character, because it's worth more than winning a debate. And let your calmness, not your anger, be the loudest voice in the room.